So welcome everybody to the virtual chapter for July 2018. This is the 8,000th presentation of the virtual chapter and still counting. We've been doing all of these online things that we've been doing it's just getting more and more exciting, and it's one of the reasons that we have the topic that we have tonight. I actually have noticed as I was looking this up that we've been doing online conferences and conventions for almost 10 years now, 9 years, the first one that I recall. And so we've got a lot of history behind this. I think we've learned some things along the way. Some things have worked, some things really haven't worked. So we're going to have an interesting discussion about all that tonight. We have a couple of guests, and essentially we're going to kind of be a panel because we've all got something in particular to bring to it. I want to just start out with official announcements so that we can get those things out of the way and get right on to the business at hand. So first of all, let me introduce to you my lovely, talented, charming, and delightful cohort, Karen Han. We so appreciate you, Karen, and all that you do to keep this thing going with us. So welcome. Glad to have you here. This is the award-winning virtual chapter, by the way. I might mention we are the chapter of the year of IMDHA, and it's just really great to be doing this month after month. So announcements, the usual announcements, what are they? We are a recognized chapter of IACT and IMDHA. We have also come to be endorsed by the International Hypnosis Federation, which means that these organizations will give CEUs to their members for attending us. And I have a feeling that if we talk really nicely to Richard Nongard, that the ICBCH or somebody that if they have a CEU thing, would probably endorse us for CEUs as well. So we'll get that on there for next time. And thank you, Richard. He just gave me a little thumbs up there. So we are recording tonight, so don't say anything that you wouldn't want your mother or the federal prosecutors to listen in on, or maybe the Russian hackers or whoever it is that you are convinced is listening to you when no one should be. The replay of this program will be available tomorrow, hopefully by about noon. It's always my intention to do that. And what we do with it is we post it on the virtual chapter, the group on Facebook. Join the virtual chapter. It's a lovely group, and it's where you get all the announcements about the programs and things that we have going on here. And next month, our meeting will be on the 14th of August. So get ready for that. Mark your calendars. Again, always the second Tuesday of the month. I can't tell you who the speaker is going to be yet because I just need to get a confirmation to make sure that that's going to be. But it'll be another real special event. And with all of that said, how you doing, Karen?
I'm doing great, Michael. Thank you very much for asking. And how about you?
Well, I'm fine. How's everything in Chicago?
Chicago is lovely. This week has been absolutely perfect. No humidity, beautiful weather, and you couldn't ask for better. So take that, Florida. And you can give it back to me in January.
Yes, trust me, I will. So, that's the first thing that I did when I moved to Florida is I remember going swimming on Christmas Day and calling my family outside of Chicago.
Okay.
You just got to do stuff like that.
But we only have a short window, about 6 days, where we can gloat. So I'm going to do it all 6 days.
Yes. Yeah. Enjoy that. At least your face won't get stuck that way or anything, and that's
right.
Because it's only 6 days. So the reason that as we get underway here, I just wanted to talk to you a couple minutes first, and then we're going to introduce our guests because they've all got specific things that they really are contributing to this topic, and that way we can even talk about why it is that we've got them here. But the topic generally is about education and online education. Jason, you've made an important change. That's lovely to know. And continuing education. So tonight, just to be clear, and so that we can kind of stay on track, it'd be lovely to have another discussion at another time about doing therapy online, and we haven't really addressed that deeply in the virtual chapter. But it's a whole other thing, and it can take us some, so far. So I'd really like to talk about just kind of the educational stuff that's available out there, not only for people the general public who doesn't know anything about hypnosis, but are looking for information. But then for students of hypnosis, the internet obviously is full of resources, and we're going to talk about all the kind of things that are available to them. Graduates of hypnosis, that is people who are already certified, that are practitioners of hypnosis, that are looking to expand their skills and to learn more things, are benefiting from this. And well, just about everybody. And at this particular point, and the reason that I'm mentioning this here, is that Karen and I are teaching a course that is a certification course through IACT. And I think the first of its kind, with sort of the IACT seal on it. They have a 220-hour requirement, and 220 hours is a lot of time to put people in front of a monitor. And they also have a requirement of some live hours. So what we have done, just to open the topic, is we began with a live module. So I had a group of students in Florida, and Karen had a group of students in Chicago. And so this was a live in-class, just like same as it ever was, weekend program. And then we have had 18, well, we're actually at number 11 now, or 13, 11.
11, yeah.
Yeah, we've just finished number 11 of 18 online sessions that are 2.25 hours each. And then there's supervised homework, and then there's going to be another live module at the end as well to get the total number of hours and the total number of live hours, and it seems to be working out pretty well.
And I want to say that even the online stuff is live, because we get together on Sunday evenings and we do our class live. I mean, Michael or I or both of us are teaching the class live and in person. And it really is just like being live and in person. I mean, how are we here tonight? It's like we're all in a room together having a meeting, right? So
yeah,
it's pretty.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, go ahead.
At the beginning of it, what happened is I think I was kind of challenged by IACT to is there a way to do this, and it's funny because I'm one of the guys. I think I have a split personality with regard to this issue. Probably why I wanted to have this conversation, because I'm a guy who I trained with Richard Bandler and John Grinder. I trained with Stephen Gilligan. I've spent a lot of time around people that I really admire and learn from in hypnosis. And something that's always been really important to me is my own kind of legacy of who it is that I've spent my time with and gone to lunch with on the breaks, and all of that stuff that comes from, live in-class trainings and the way that we've always done it. And although I use the internet for almost everything, I think for a long time I had some hesitancy that said you can't really certify people in hypnosis online, because if you can't really watch them and you can't really see them, and the funny thing is now what happens is people are raising the questions to me that I was raising in the beginning, because somewhere along the line when the challenge came, what happened to my question was it turned into something. It wasn't you can't do that. It turned into how can you do that? It became a different thing, that these things that people were presenting as reasons that this was something not to do, actually the what ifs, became for me really serious questions of, so what are the particular challenges? What are the things that we need to overcome in order to be able to do it successfully? So, I searched and shopped and found Zoom, for example, as a medium that gives us not only the opportunity to have a live interaction like this, where everybody can talk and participate, but that we have breakout rooms so that when it's time to do exercises in class, students can pair up, they can work together, and we can check in on them and step in and out of those breakout rooms. We can be called into the breakout room if there's questions, and all of the things that seemed to be problematic just started one by one disappearing.
Falling into place. That's right.
Yeah. Now, yeah, go ahead.
As I got into hypnosis and learned new techniques, I think mine was a little different tack on it than yours, Michael, because it just never occurred to me that we couldn't do it any particular way. When I first learned age regression, I was telling a friend, I was in Chicago telling a friend of mine about it in San Francisco, and she said, "Can we try it on the telephone?" And I said, "Sure, why not?" And we did it right there and then. And it just didn't occur to me that we couldn't or that we shouldn't.
Sure.
And I guess that's true. And then Michael, however, is the pioneer who discovered Zoom and the breakout rooms and all of that, and held a class. And I took his class on the virtual hypnotist and the virtual trainer. And of course, it all made perfect sense. And just like in the virtual chapter, I get to sweep in on Michael's coattails. He does all the work, and I just get to come in and look pretty. Thank you, Michael.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, Pretty does a whole lot to clean this mess up. So,
but it just paved the way, and it just works beautifully. Like you, Michael, I will admit that there was a challenge a little bit to not have the class right in front of us at the beginning. I really like to see the looks on the faces and get the feedback. So yeah. I prefer to run my class in gallery view so that I can interact always with my clients. Mm-hmm. But as soon as I figured that, or my students, but as soon as I figured that out, there was absolutely really no problem other than not having my whiteboard back here that I can write on.
Yeah, yeah.
But I'll bet you figured out a way around that too.
And that's exactly right. We figure out ways around each little thing as they as they come along. And I got to admit, so back to the part of me that said what I said earlier about legacy. The lunch hour just isn't quite the same, but there are some things about being in a shared space, breathing the same air. I'm not, I don't know that I'm ever going to say that virtual is better than live, but what I am going to say is that virtual is available, is more readily available. And the question is, for some people, virtual is more affordable, because it doesn't involve traveling and staying in hotels, and all of the kind of stuff that might be involved for people in attending a live training as well. So it has so many advantages that yeah, there are some things that I think I'm willing to admit that you'll lose. We're trying to make sure that we minimize those losses and that we really can maximize the advantages that that we have from doing this. And yeah, I would say at this particular point, we've got folks in a class from outside of the country. I mean, it's really quite a cool thing. And then they're all coming back together, on their live weekends, half of them in Chicago and half of them in Florida. And there's even the potential, if you think about it, to have 3 teachers or 4 teachers, running a course like this, starting out with their own students for the live modules, and then joining their resources to put together a larger class, because I know of a whole lot of folks through IAC and 9BHA, at least, that we're doing classes of 5 or 6 people. And what a nice idea to be able to get somebody else who's running a class, and work together on something like this.
How else, how often can a chapter meeting have all of these people from all over the country gathered together at one time? I know they're high rollers, both of them, but I just don't think that Jason and Richard would have flown into Chicago or Orlando tonight for a chapter meeting. Mm-hmm. Right? Yeah. And this is a way to do that. I taught a class for Cheryl and Larry. Hi, you guys, the Ellmans. They were teaching a certification class, and I did a Zoom session for them. And we can do that around Robin and have a whole lot of guest speakers in our certification classes. Isn't that a great thing and a great way to pass on information to our students? Yeah, so besides talking about our course, and that's enough of that. I wasn't really intending to promo the course, except so here's one of the things that we're experiencing. And the other is just to say that right from the beginning, by the way, I am the guy who started out at a DOS prompt trying to do hypnosis online with people. I'm real clear about this. And I remember being in an alt hypnosis news group with Roy Hunter and a couple of other people, like way back when AOL and Prodigy were, the way to get to the internet. And yeah, we were trying to do it with text and everything else. If we found a new toy and oh my gosh, here's maybe another venue or another way to use it. So we've been doing all that for a long time, but the virtual chapter itself is an example of, I think, just what we're talking about. Yeah, we can get people from everywhere. You and I, Karen, we know a lot of people, and the result of that, and they're all over the map. So the result of that is, yes, we can get Richard Nongard, and we can get Jason Linett. And by the way, because we got them here, I think it's just about time for us to
begin to consider the possibility of perhaps including them in our conversation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce one of them first, and then you can introduce the other one second.
Okay.
Would that be a good idea? And
Good idea.
or I could introduce the second one first. Whichever way you'd like to do it, but
either way is better. But the way I'm going to do it is whoever you don't introduce, that's who I'm going to introduce.
So I'm going to tell you that Richard Nongard is with us tonight. Richard, by the way, runs the ICBCH. He is a licensed marriage and Richard, I've still got you muted. I better open up this microphone because you're going to want to talk when I've done that.
I like talking.
Oh, good. You got it open. Good. Okay. Yeah. So he's a licensed marriage and family therapist. He is a certified clinical therapist. He has degrees in both counseling and ministry, and he has a doctorate in transformational leadership from Bakey Graduate University in Seattle. And oh my gosh, he's just done so many things. I have a feeling that most people here have heard his name one way or another. There's online courses, there are books, there's his involvement with Hypno Thoughts, and now, oh my goodness, he has acquired HPTI, and Lord, everybody just take a step backwards because something magnificent is going to happen there. So welcome, Richard. We're glad you're on the call with us tonight.
Well, thank you for having me. Awesome to be here.
Yeah. So, I mentioned, and I think, I believe you were involved in it. I mentioned that we've been doing this stuff for at least 9 years, because my recollection is the Global Hypnosis Summit is the one that I remember, and it was just before Hypno Thoughts. I think it was, in fact, it was 2009.
2009 was the Global Hypnosis Summit. That was the first online education that sort of got in the consciousness of all hypnosis professionals. I've actually been doing online education since before online existed. And I've always been involved in non-traditional education, and I'm actually on faculty at 2 universities where much of the work is done online. So people think of me as a hypnotist, but I have a whole other life over here as a therapist and as an academic. And so I've been online since 1999, doing online education. You can go back to the Wayback Machine, and you can go to Fast CEUs, and you can look at my webpage in 1999 and see where I began first offering online education courses. So it's pretty cool. It's been, I can't do the math because I have a degree in therapy, but I think that's 20 years.
Mm-hmm. Now, a bunch of that stuff that you did was at the beginning were recorded things, right?
Yeah, I was one of the few presenters at the Global Hypnosis Summit who actually did theirs live, because most people didn't have the technical capacity to do that. But in online education, I really prefer kind of a hybrid format. I've experimented with just about everything, and I like pre-recorded because it's always perfect because you can edit it. But I also like live discussion. So lately what I've been doing with the HPTI Summer School and with my own subliminal science course tonight on personality is there's a pre-recorded 45 minutes and then a Zoom session for 45 minutes. So being able to combine both. And of course, all of that's downloadable. So a person who can't make it real time, just like this virtual chapter meeting, will undoubtedly join in later on and watch the archive, and they get the whole content. Great.
All right. Well, I'm glad you're here. I want to give Karen a chance to introduce Jason, so we can get him on the conversation. And it's good to have you, Richard.
Thanks. Hopefully, Jason will let me on his show someday.
You have to be pretty impressive to make the Work Smart Hypnosis.
I figure if I do a good job on this show, maybe he'll let me be on.
He's been on 3 times and doesn't remember.
Jason Linett probably needs absolutely no introduction, but maybe I just say that because I'm one of his biggest fans. He runs the Work Smart Hypnosis podcast, and he's got several other wonderful online training events and Facebook pages for hypnotists, and he travels to all the conferences too, so you get him live or on tape, and it's always wonderful. And I'll tell you, I took a virtual gastric band class from Jason completely online. I found out about it on a webinar, which was online. I paid for it. I took the class online, and it was like being in the classroom. And it was all recorded. It was not live. So it worked perfectly. So Jason, I hope I didn't spill all of your beans, but tell us more about you. And you run Virginia Hypnosis also in Virginia.
Thank you. Thank you. And the real benefit of the online is that you can't do this on in a live class or this or that. And when the birds follow me, let's turn that crap off. So yay, technology. This is why we help people. Yeah. So my whole entry into this is kind of back to one of the points that Michael brought up a few moments ago, that here I was brand new at all this about a dozen or so years ago when I was transitioning from being a hobby to full-time, and hearing a lot of dialogue of that doesn't work. And I mean, that was a dialogue even happening in terms of the work in the session, that, you know, there are some trainers who would go about the more absolutist model of training to go, if you don't use this technique, it's not going to work. You have to use this strategy. And throughout everything, I was looking at it from the filter of, rather than saying that doesn't work, we should be asking the question of, how do I make that work better? And there's elements of not just putting cartoon birds around the top of your head, but as an instructor, you know, you can do a demo in the classroom, and that's awesome. And you can then teach it in terms of what you did, which is cool. Yet to have the ability for a student to see the demo done 6 different ways with 6 different people and how it was modified for the individual would be an extremely tedious day in class. So years ago, and this slight against myself inside of the story, that I started to listen to my audience, that as I was offering trainings, you know, people would say, that looks great. Could you do a live stream of it? And I'm in Northern Virginia where traffic is atrocious. And they wanted to live stream it rather than drive 10 miles, which is an hour and a half sometimes in this area. So it's listening to what people were looking for. And it's not, in my opinion, the discussion of this or that. It's really a this and that. And to go out on a bit of a limb in terms of a personal opinion on this, I can appreciate the intention behind the number of hours that's every organization that talks about. Yet, to look at the quality of the training. So the biggest lesson is that the way that we would do a live class is one thing, but the way that we would produce for online is a slightly different animal. That the real discovery is that just because the cameras are on doesn't mean you have something ready for someone to watch. Which the benefit of thinking this way is it drives everything to now become modules and specific lessons. Where, think about any educational event you've been to, even outside of our community, the flaw of most instructors is they spend too much time talking about what they don't have time to cover, rather than what they are specifically there to cover. So to kick off right away, here's the demo so you all have context. Here's the actual explanation. Now let's get into the discussion of it. And suddenly now, by doing so many things online, and you know, there's the podcast, there's the programs I've got more than 500 hours of stuff online at this point. Richard's got 500 times more than that. But to look at all of these things, it converts back over to the live experience. And to have that delineation in terms of, here's what's great for this format, here's what's different of that format. And Max is walking in and it says bedtime. Hey, Max, come say hello.
Hi, Max.
This is what happens when I shoot at home.
Yeah.
And this happens.
Hi, Max.
Hi, Max.
All right, it's your bedtime, buddy. Go upstairs, buddy. There we go.
Great.
That doesn't happen in the live classroom.
So by the way, Jason, as you're talking about that, something that's interesting is, first of all, with regard to your podcast, you've got 100, and I have a feeling this number has got to have increased because that was months ago, but 125,000 downloads or something like that.
We're past 250K at this point.
Yeah. So you know, that's truly impressive, and it's good material. I know that it's good material, and I see who you have as guests, and I, you know, listen to your podcast from time to time, and, you know, I love it. And here's the deal. When students come to us, so like, for example, so Karen and I are running this class. One of the things that happens between classes, we'll introduce a topic, and our students will rush to Google. And so by the time they come back next week, they are thoroughly confused or enlightened, depending on where Google took them. And so this is one of the interesting challenges that we have. So the question that I'm posing, and I'm posing this, of course, Jason, to you and to Richard and to Karen, as just a general panel question here. Is there any suggestion that you would make, or anything that you can say to people that are listening to this about how to discern quality when they're looking online for information about hypnosis?
I know the answer to that one.
Go for it, Richard.
The number one answer is this. You probably shouldn't take a training from somebody you can't book an appointment with. That's been my general advice for the last 30 years. Yes, you can book an appointment with me. You can go to hypnosisnevada.com and you can book an appointment with me and see me to stop smoking or lose weight or whatever else. Now, there was about a 2-year period when I left Oklahoma and came to Las Vegas when I was dealing with throat issues, where the office was closed. But in the last 30 years, I've spent probably 27 of them actively seeing clients. So I think rule number one, whether it's online or offline, is, are you actually getting training from somebody who's really doing the real work of hypnosis? And I don't carry a large caseload at this time. I'm not trying to see 8 or 10 clients a day. But you can make an appointment with me any day of the week. And I will see clients, and I do see clients in my office. And I think rule number one is actually learn from somebody who has been doing the real work and continues to do the real work of hypnosis.
Well, of course, and if I can just piggyback on that, the one consideration that I have is I wasn't thinking about people that are looking for trainers, and I appreciate what you're saying, because you're spot on about that. I mean, so in the sense that, like I said, Karen and I will teach something, and then they'll go out on the internet and they'll look at 20 other people doing demonstrations of a similar technique. Some of them are good, some of them are horrendous, and then they come back to us thoroughly confused, because they said, well, this guy said this about it, and this person said that about it, and this person said that about it. So if you're just looking at YouTube because you want to learn something about the Elman induction, for example. Is there some way that just a typical consumer or just looking for basic information can know what really is quality and what really is
just for the record, Michael, I did take my demonstration of the Elman hypnosis induction off of YouTube so that the poor quality demonstrations wouldn't be there anymore. So you're probably safe learning on YouTube now. I think YouTube's a great place, and I think anybody who is serious about learning hypnosis will quickly learn to discern between those who are good in a technique and not good in a technique. And fortunately for YouTube, I can watch 3 or 4 swish patterns in a row, or 3 or 4 Elman inductions in a row, or 3 or 4 contextual hypnotherapy inductions in a row, and I'll say, wow, that one was great, that one was horrible, and that one was the middle of the road. And the flip side of it is different people respond to different things.
Right.
So what somebody might find impractical, somebody else may find to be the most wonderful demonstration they've ever seen.
I'd piggyback off that there's a thought too in terms of, and I say this to clients nowadays on the phone, that, if you're looking and making comparisons, you want to do a Google search of that person's information and find evidence far beyond their own website. So at times to be able to see how someone else is doing something, though that does pose a quote that I believe actually has now been confirmed to be an original Scott Sandlin quote, then modeled by Michael Ellner, then quoted by me a whole lot, of the learn from people who disagree with each other. That you're going to find different styles, different approaches. And I'd share there was a coaching call I was on today that the entire epiphany the person had was that, oh, wait, I don't have to do it the exact same way every single time. So here's a moment where, and I love the phrase of doing the Elman, especially with the Elmans watching. Cheryl, Larry, brace yourself. So the experience of, here's a moment where today, and someone, I'm doing the count backwards from 100, and he lets them go to 100. Okay, but the book says I'm supposed to say something with 98 and 99. Well, no, that's how he did it. So it's where I think back to one of the very first hypnosis conventions I went to, which the dialogue here is that several of us on this call are also fellow instructors. And I'd say this without ego behind it, but with a massive amount of ego attached to it, that I'm very cautious about who I invite on the podcast, because I'm going to have people on who present outstanding information, such as last week's session featuring Karen Hand, episode 171, and coming this week, Rick Green, and the week after that, Janet Thompson. So having people on who I'm recognizing are doing good work. So I think back to one of the first conventions I went to, where I had compiled a list of all the workshops I was interested in, and I sent it off to the person who I'd been training with at the time to say, this is what I'm looking at. And what he did that was outstanding was not to say, that one's bad, this one's good, to say, well, what's your goal? Okay, well, example, here's one on sleep improvement, and this person is actually a technician working in a sleep lab, and he's going to give you the terminology that you should be aware of in working with these issues. If that's what you're looking for, take that workshop. Or this workshop, she's teaching strategies in terms of how to help these people. What's your goal? And also, this one's probably more lecture, this one's more hands-on. Buy the audios so you get that one, and then you can interact live with this one. So it's back to that hybrid approach that Richard mentioned that is entirely my focus these days, of to become self-referential in such a nature that you can reference, here's the content that, this lecture segment, I got it right the first time that I videoed it, and now I can share that with my students, and when they show up day one, we're all on the same page. Yes. So it's a mechanism of supplementing what's there. So I'd say in terms of figuring out quality, you spend enough time online, you start to pick up, again, just by doing a Google search, can I actually work with this person? Is this a person actually seeing a client? It's where my terminology of a person being a hypnotic worker, they're actually doing the work rather than just teaching it to others.
Yeah.
Well, here's the other reality to look at too, that a Google search and online information is not the only place that confusion can be set up. I mean, you teach a new hypnotist and set them loose at any conference, any hypnosis conference, and they're going to run into some pretty bad speakers, and they're going to run into some really excellent speakers, and they're going to run into some people who say you have to do it this way or you won't have any success, and they're going to run into other people who say different things. So it's certainly, I mean, I don't think that it's just our issue with having students go to Google, right? I think it's almost any place that they can run into information.
Sure. I've also had that happen with clients who have never done anything with hypnosis before. They made an appointment with me, but before the appointment, then they somehow or another they rushed off to the web and they saw somebody having a demon cast out of them or something by a hypnotist, and then it just lengthened my pre-talk.
Right.
Well, if you didn't put the demon there in the first place, Michael.
I want to acknowledge Jason. Jason put something in the chat here, or not Jason, but Joseph rather put something in the chat here, and I think he's right, and it goes back to what you've already said too. He did that. He says exactly to understand at the beginning. He looked at everything, and I can get that we do that, and thank God. I hope that our students are zealous enough, to look all over the place. And he said that he was confused at first, but I think that after a little while, I guess maybe I'm a little too concerned about it, that you can start to discriminate, to discern the difference between who's got it going on and who doesn't. The thing that I know, and Jason, because you said this with your podcast, I think this is right. Once you've discovered somebody has something, some quality to offer, then the next time you go to YouTube, that's the place to go back to. Mm-hmm. And eventually you can sort of figure out, you can have your presets, And
I mean, the real reason my program keeps going is that those are conversations that I actually want to have. Mm-hmm. So it's not necessarily the, hey, what do you have to promote? Let's talk about this funny story. It's you go to a convention, it's the dialogue like we're able to get into here. That what's cool about this format, and I love that you all do this virtual chapter, because it's the ongoing conversation as opposed to let's have one person at the front of the room presenting. I mean, I'd bring about, by way of a bit of a metaphor, the experience of having a hobby of doing magic as a teenager and going to the local magic club, and someone would get up and they'd perform something, and no matter how it went, everybody would applaud and everybody would say that was great. And yet clearly there were things that could have been improved upon. And there's a way to give feedback in such a way that people can act upon it and improve upon it, rather than just the automatic pat on the back of, oh, that was wonderful, that was great. It's like, no, I saw exactly how you did that, and it wasn't entertaining at all. Now, there's more positive ways to phrase that. But that ability to get that feedback and have that dialogue with people, you know, the ways that Richard did videos 10 years ago are different than the way he does them now. The ways that I do videos years ago are different from how mine are now. And the whole aspect of what's great about this online platform is we can have that information on demand right away. There was chatter in a Facebook group about people going, hey, I want to release products for my clients on a USB flash drive like a credit card. What would you recommend? And suddenly I shot a 10-minute video, which is like, well, I've bought from 3 different companies. Here are the products. Here are the pluses and minuses of all of them. There you go. Pick the one you want to work with. Mm-hmm. And that's a dialogue that, rather than having to wait till, you know, many months from now when we're all together somewhere to get that dialogue, you know, a student asks a question and suddenly, great, let me produce a piece of content on that. We can put that up in the library and get that answer right away. So as much as there may be confusion earlier on, you know, I think to someone like Mike Mandel, who, let's go back to the Dave Ellman induction, he does the fractionation 6 times. And it works when he does it that way. Now, the original was 3. Okay. Are you getting the result? Are you getting the outcome in place? And just that flexibility to look at even a session I did today that we worked for a while on the issue. I emerged him. We went into a circle of excellence thing in terms of stepping into the batter's box, playing baseball. And then we went back into the actual formal hypnosis to solidify all the work. And no, wait, I didn't follow a set protocol the entire way through. Oh. Where did that come from? Well, it's the flexibility of the nature of just, that's what felt right to do in that process.
Right.
And I think that's the biggest thing for the new student, to see that flexible nature of things rather than this is the one and only way.
Absolutely. Well, and after all, what is hypnosis if it isn't ultimately a conversation with the unconscious mind, or however you want to think about it, but a conversation. I think a whole lot of folks, I heard in your broadcast the use of one of my favorite words. You know, you were talking about the grimoire. You know, I think there are a lot of students come with that idea. Here's how, there must be a right way to do this. There must be exactly the right words to say.
Wouldn't it be nice? Wouldn't it be lovely if that were true?
There's a moment usually when I'm teaching like an extended live training. It's usually like day 3 or 4 where I just give them the pre-frame of, whenever you ask me a question that begins with, could I'm going to answer you yes before you finish asking the question.
Because I started training in NLP before hypnosis, one of the things that happened with me is that when I write out instructions for hypnosis exercises, I don't give them words. I give them, this needs to happen, and then this needs to happen, and then I give them sequences of events, you know, and say, now guide somebody through this sequence. So they're not going to get the words from me too well. At least not any rote, you know, not any rote memorizations. And of course that's Karen's big deal.
I was going to say, yes, I'm really against scripts, but I also understand that, I have students. We have students in our class right now, Michael, who are afraid of moving off the word. They just don't get it yet.
They need
to start them out with a format, to start them out with something they can follow, and then let them know, now you move it here and you move it here. What are you laughing at? I missed it.
I said they need a hypnotist. Maybe the next class, one of the first exercises that we could do is hypnotize them so as not to be afraid.
Well,
if out of transformations early in a class, you give them the exercise of the make eye contact, meaningful eye contact. One is the hypnotist, one is the client. And then the next pass, they can use the gift of language they've evolved as the modern practitioner. And now they have the gift of the words, that's right.
Absolutely.
And by doing that first, before I stick any document in their hands, now they're frustrated that they've got this thing in their hands. It is me going, embrace that. Now, these are our training wheels. This is the safety net. And what I've often found from my own experience years ago to even the new student of it, it's the nice benefit that the more we prepare for the session in the early years, the less we need it.
Yeah.
So it's recycling that learning. It's sharpening that focus of what we're about to get into.
Sure.
And it's where, I worked in professional theater for many years, and the actors don't necessarily sit and play the game of memorization the way that it used to be done in terms of rote. Once they have the meaning of the scene and the meaning of the dialogue and what their subtext, what their goal of saying that statement is, then the words are just absorbed.
Sure.
So to not necessarily work for the mindset of memorization, but to work for the mindset of clarity of focus and intention, and to save the memorization task for things that absolutely need it, as opposed to, here's just the flow of the process. And like you mentioned, here's the outline, here's sort of the recipe of all these different pieces. And it's where I, will often do the same thing. And I'd say, do an induction of your choosing, do 2 deepeners, then run this process, and getting that flexibility in place early on.
Nice.
So, Richard, I'm curious, because you've run a couple of these summits or extended online trainings.
A virtual hypnosis convention, hypnosisconvention.com. The next one comes up in September with Michael Watson, Karen Hand, Jody Johnson Nita, Jason Linett, and Rusty Williams. So half this room will be there.
Though there's also the HPTI Summer School featuring this coming Sunday, Ethical Influence to Sell Your Services.
Whoa.
Hey there, look at that.
Yes, I put together a lot of that stuff. And I helped Scott put together the summit in 2009. So.
And I'm curious, and maybe I'm sure that you have a way to measure this, because Richard, you and Jason are nothing if you don't measure stuff, right? But do you have any sense, Richard, how many people watch live and how many people watch in their own time?
I have a great sense of it. So I really encourage people to watch 24/7. In other words, I make sure that everybody knows this is happening Tuesday night at 7 o'clock. But I make sure everybody knows that they can access it 24/7. And I'm going to say 80% of the people choose to access it 24/7 because I strongly encourage that. One of the reasons why I strongly encourage that is just from a tech perspective, multiple sign-ons onto an account can, cause server problems. It hasn't ever caused me one yet because I buy the best WP Engine, private server, which frankly is probably just as good as anybody else's. But nonetheless, you don't want 700 multiple sign-ons at the same time in WooCommerce, for example, or in WordPress. So I do encourage it, and about 80% of the people do choose to watch it other than the original broadcast time. What I found about this is interesting, though. They don't not follow through. They actually watch all 11 videos in the series or all 24 videos in the series. It might take them 2 or 3 months. Let's take the virtual hypnosis convention. We did that last March or February. We did 24 classes in a 2-day period. And I go look at the stats and people are still watching it every single week. So people are rewatching it. And that's the thing. So I posted in the chat here in our Zoom chat group a couple of journal articles because I'm really big into the proof that things work. Some of you have seen my little book titled 101 Proofs That Hypnosis Actually Works. I've been giving it away now for the last 2 years. And online education works. So the proof is not only anecdotal, hey, Richard and Jason and Karen and Michael have had good success with it, but the peer-reviewed literature from the university system shows possible that online education is as good as live education. You can literally get a degree in engineering online completely. Now, people say, how can you possibly get a degree in engineering online? If the university is good at providing the education and can also provide the internships and the learning experiences on a local level that are required for success, a person can even get an engineering degree online. That's been HPTI's model. 90% of this is online, but we're going to connect you with a local regional mentor so you can do this in person as well. And here's what I've found in teaching university classes. Forget about hypnosis, just go to university education. If I teach a class, Substance Abuse Counseling 101, and I teach it live in person, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 9 a.m. to noon. Students will show up to listen to my lectures. They'll take the final exam. They'll take the midterm, the final exam. They'll do a paper. And maybe they read the book. Maybe they didn't read the book. Maybe they attended the lectures, maybe they were surfing the internet during the lectures, but they get a passing grade, a C or a B, because they're good at test taking or they're good at writing a paper. In online education, I only have one way to measure whether or not you're doing the work, and that is at the end of each chapter to require a quiz, at the end of each chapter to require a paper, at the end of the semester to ask for a personal response to the material that's been taught and the way that you're applying it. And what I've found in my online college courses is my students actually do 100% of the work, which I never did when I was in college. I'm just going to be the first to admit it. And I think the online classes that I teach are much tougher than the real life college classes that I attended. And so the proof is in the pudding here. I put 3 journal articles that talk, one from University of Washington, a couple others in here that talk about the efficacy of online education. I think online education, by the way, is good for people who are, one of the things about somebody who completes an online education program, whether it's a university degree or HPTI, or even one of my classes like this 6-part series on personality, the people who finish it are self-starters. Mm-hmm. They're disciplined people. They have the personality characteristics and traits that also contribute to success. So a better quality of student actually graduates from online programs than I think in the in-person program. So that was, I think I kind of sensed from you, Michael, at the beginning, a resistance to admitting that online education was just as good, but the research shows that it is, but it does appeal to a different type of student. There are some students, for example, me, I want paper books. I can't read a book on Kindle. I can't.
Yeah.
I've tried many, I've wasted a lot of money on Kindle books and I've never read one yet. I'm just not going to move away from paper. And then there are some students who are just going to benefit from the traditional classroom. And so having both available to people is awesome.
Yeah.
There's a piggyback statement to that too, which is that the fear, and this is going to translate over to having, let's say, products for actually clients, for the general public to look at too, that someone who interacts with you in one format will very likely end up following you to another format. I had a live training a couple of months ago, I think it was back in February, where I stood there at the beginning and I just said, it was like day 2 that I said this. It's like, just so you know, and this is not a complaint. I just want to point out that I'm looking at the audience and you all already have every product that I already have on the market. So if you're worried about a sales pitch, I have nothing else to offer you. But it was the discovery that because they had interacted in this format, you know, you listen to the band and you want to go see the concert. Mm-hmm. So the aspect of, again, expanding how we talk about the dialogue, there's an interesting statistic that I read once and I'm now trying to track it down once again, that piracy is at a bit of a low right now because in terms of how easy it is to get information appropriately. You know, I've got $50 sitting in a PayPal account and suddenly we want to watch a movie and we can rent it off of that now directly from a machine. You know, I can go through the task of trying to figure out, I'm sure there's still ways to illegally download movies, but I can just on my phone hit a button and it's on my television. And it's so easy to get information. We have the Blu-ray 3D setup for movies here at home. And you buy that disc and it comes with the Blu-ray, DVD, 3D, Blu-ray 3D movie. But the 5-year-old you just met doesn't like the glasses, so we watch the regular Blu-ray. But then again, we also bring the disc of the DVD into the van, and just in case you get a digital download as well. So there's an amazing renaissance in how easy it is to access information. So you know, you can read the physical paper book, you can get the Kindle, you can have an Audible account and listen to it while you're driving. So the ability to have so much information in the renaissance we've got now, which I want to highlight something here, which this is going to convert over again, because I want to make sure we're not just talking to the trainers here, that in terms of everything that I've built for Virginia Hypnosis is the mindset of the definition of define your hub. So if you can define what the hub of your business is, then you know how people should be finding you. So the hub of everything Work Smart Hypnosis is the podcast, which as Richard was chatting about numbers, I was looking briefly to go, in just the last 7 days, here are people downloading sessions that I put out 2 or 3 years ago. So there's an amazing lifespan of information online. And the fact that also with an international audience, there's people who are just now waking up. And here we are, mostly office in the evening. So to look at the shape of the hub of Virginia Hypnosis, which is my local brick and mortar practice, the hub of that business is entirely the Virginia Hypnosis website, which is really for me a portal to show videos where I'm talking down the barrel of a lens, one person to another, not playing the game of we can help you with this and we can help you with that. And you're coming into the office and you're working with me in my space. So to have that dialogue one-to-one with just some little nuances of this, make sure the quality of the content is good. And I did not record information until I had said it on the phone or in person to a whole bunch of people in terms of workshopping. How do I become concise? How do I get to the point? How do I teach this and convey this message in the most appropriate, efficient way possible, rather than rambling on for 45 minutes and never quite getting to my content, which I'm seeing a lot of nodding from that statement as a concern there. The other statement, too, is notice that all of us who have been speaking so far, you can hear us rather clearly. People will watch a fuzzy image as I'm fighting with lighting, as we just recently replaced the lighting in this room. And if I'm right here, it looks good. I'll just keep my head still from now on. I'm in a different setup than normal, even though it's the same room I usually use at home. But I'm here with my Blue Yeti microphone, which is wonderfully phallic in nature, but the sound is phenomenal. Yeah, Michael, get the foam topper.
All of y'all don't have to compare.
Fits the $5. It's got this way. It's safer. It turns out too. Stop it. So
if you're on gallery view, look at all these men who immediately have to pick up theirs and show.
Come on, Karen, show us yours.
I'm sorry, mine is tucked away neatly into my camera.
Gross. So anyway, making sure the content is clear so you can have that dialogue. And again, to think of it in terms of, with all that you do, have the mindset of the one-to-one. Yeah. That is what's converting the best these days. So I'm talking down the barrel of the lens in terms of that person coming into my office who wants to quit smoking, and it's me talking directly to that one person. If I'm shooting content in my office, whether I'm capturing the catchphrase sometimes is the video shoot disguised as a live class, where the cameras are rolling and I'm purposefully pausing going, there's the cut point. Now I can crop this segment out. I can put it into something. So to have the mindset, though, that you're talking to that one specific person who needs to hear that message, which that dissolves, in my experience from teaching this to many other people, it dissolves the anxiety, the fear of how do I present this, because if it takes a bit of self-hypnosis or creative thinking, the little green light here in my computer is every one of you who's interacting with this. So to have that dialogue with that one person and make sure they can hear you, make sure they can see you, and you just get into a bit of a rhythm of knowing, okay, this is what my setup is. In my office, my computer is in the darkest corner of the room. So I spent a little bit of money online, and I've got 2 little LED lights that I can flip a switch and they turn on. And then I've got that lighting so I can produce there. I can set up cameras in my classroom, and you have a better quality camera here than most of what we used to carry around.
Yeah.
So it's become so easy to produce that information, though. I'd give you my productivity cycle for it is I'm going to outline exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to do it several times and let it be horrible, and then turn the camera on because you only have to see the last take.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And even when the phone rang during my session recording with Karen last week, that was my fault. And on the recording, I say, don't worry, Katie, my editor, will take this out. She cleaned up as much as she could. Though everyone's been commenting to me, oh, I love when the phone rang. That was such a cool moment. I'm like,
looking behind the scenes.
It's behind the scenes. So it doesn't have to be perfect. In fact, when it's perfect, it's not as believable. Mm-hmm. So just to have that dialogue and be human. Sure. I had a video of me doing an instant induction with my daughter when she was 2 years old. Max walked in the room earlier. The whole just be human, be presentable, and just talk to people as you talk to people.
Yeah. Well, and again, here we go back to personality. So Richard, that's a key word for you. is your program tonight?
Yeah.
It is tonight. It's actually at 7 o'clock Las Vegas time. So that's in another 30 minutes. And it's titled Personality Transformation. So as a therapist, I spent many years working with personality disordered individuals because psychotherapy only looks at what's wrong with people, not at what's right with people. Mm-hmm. And that was how I started in the world of therapy, working in the criminal justice system and dealing with borderline and antisocial personality types. So it's always been an area of study and interest to me. And in hypnosis, for some reason, we don't really talk very often about personality. But when I run up against clients who are truly stuck, it's often those lifelong patterns. Are they innate? Is it nurture versus nature? Lots of debate on that. But it's those core personality traits. And so I've created a real experiential course where a person gets to discover their own personality in order to learn how to help clients transform their personality. So that's a 6-week course. It's every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Las Vegas time. And
what's the deal then? Is it live and interactive or is it?
So I've pre-recorded about 50 minutes for each segment, and then I'll turn on the Zoom room afterwards for lots of discussion and chance to talk about what we've discovered about ourselves and how we can apply it to clients, just like this Zoom room here.
Cool. I realized after
$36.
It's literally our sign-off time is when your sign-on time is for that program, and I realized it this afternoon. I'm like, oh my gosh, what a busy fella he is.
And I'm getting ready to fly off to Seattle to go hang out with Kelly Woods for 4 days.
There you go. I had a question a minute ago, and now I have a different one. And my different one is, what was that question that I had a minute ago? I know.
Hypnosis doesn't work for that, Michael.
It doesn't.
No.
One of the things that I think is interesting about all this is that I want to make sure that we're actually saying things that are relevant to the folks that are listening here, because it isn't just a trainer talk after all. As we said, the choices are so far. There are YouTube, there are podcasts, there are seminars, there are workshops. There's all of these things going on. There's the conventions that we've talked about. The ACHE, by the way, last year, the 2017 convention, I think they did virtually, and I think my sense was that they're going to start doing that maybe every other year. So that's happening more and more. And one of the things that I dig about being a trainer is that I love to go places. So I'm beginning to get a little concerned, and I wonder what you think about this in terms of the future of training. I went to Brazil earlier this year. I've traveled a lot in the UK. I really like to do that. Are they going to hire me? And they're going to say, but it's okay, Michael, you could just stay home?
I mentioned this earlier. I think in many cases that people want a little bit of both. And the benefit nowadays is that people can get that sample. They can get that experience rather than going somewhere cold. We will often have people who are coming to different programs, different events. And I mentioned the class I did back in February where everybody who was there was already inside every online program that I had.
Yeah.
So looking at it as it's not, I don't think it's an or, it's an and. The benefit though is that by having this as an option, I mean, this kind of goes back to, I'm the one who would buy the audios of a convention, that when I'm in Karen's workshop, Michael's in the other room and I can't hear what he's doing, but now I can go mobile university and listen to it on my car, listen to it wherever I'm going. Mm-hmm. So I see it continuing to advance the live as much as I think it's going to help us focus the live.
So in the world of real television, everything is narrowing down. Live sports are changing. For one thing, people are watching live sports on their phone now, and so big televisions are going by the wayside. But what major broadcast companies are doing is they're moving all of their broadcast headquarters to, say, Atlanta. And each area where there'll be a live sporting event, they'll have maybe a cameraman and an audio guy, and they'll have some remote cameras up there, but all of the mixing and everything will be done in one location. So if the big broadcast companies can do that, why can't hypnosis companies do that? And Michael, I don't think travel is going to go out the window, but I think it's going to open a convention up to a whole lot more people. In other words, they could bring all of the trainers to Brazil, and anybody else who wants to go can come, but they can just have the conference with a bunch of trainers, they're broadcasting out to everybody.
I think that let me throw my 2 cents in, and it's only worth 2 cents. I think that it's a big mistake for a live conference to webcast. So I used to webcast back in the day. Roger Moore and I used to webcast all of our classes together, and then nobody came to our classes anymore. And I noticed that the conventions that do webcast are conventions that are dwindling in numbers. So HypnoThoughts Live is increasing in numbers. And they'll probably hit almost 1,000 people this year. And HPTI is having a convention in Las Vegas in February of 2019, and I can guarantee it will not be webcast. And the reason why is simple. People want the live experience. It is valuable to us. And the online people do follow to the live experiences. And I look forward to those. And I look forward to continuing my policy of never webcasting live events.
Well, and as a matter of fact, as you mentioned that, Richard, it's important to remember that HypnoThoughts Live grew out of something that was an online experience first.
Right.
And that's what's interesting is that it worked the other way, that they were online. It was an online community who finally said, "Hey, let's get together and hang out." So I appreciate your point, because you're right. The online people do in fact translate over to the live things, and that can happen.
And to put this into a context, thinking in terms of people doing client sessions, there are segments of the market that will not come to one of us in a one-to-one session, but they will very happily sign up for a group session experience.
Yeah.
There are people who budget or timing or childcare may be an issue, and they won't come to our office or our group session, but they'll buy the audio or the program online. So to ever play the game of this or that, it's got to be an and, in my opinion, because there's the dialogue of it opens up a whole community of people that normally wouldn't be exposed to this. Mm-hmm. There's names in the profession who have put out a ton of content, whether it's a Wendy Friesen, a Paul McKenna, Steve G. Jones. And the number of people who get their first interaction, their first taste of hypnosis because of the work of some of these people, they come into our office as a result. Here's the story of something that happens in the news. Chris Jones gets Howie Mandel to shake hands on television. And whether you thought that was appropriate or not, it's a whole other conversation. But many of our phones rung off the hook that week.
Yeah.
Get Out was the big movie that mentioned hypnosis. And suddenly the phone was ringing. I know it's not exactly like that, but can you help me that way? Yeah. And he's giving me an expectation. And thank you, Incredibles 2, for at least replacing Captain Underpants with another hypnosis story inside of it. Yes. So these things continue that dialogue, continue that conversation. And there are people who will never go to a hypnosis convention. There are people who will never go to a training. But there's people who want to learn more, because not everybody has the goal of being the one-to-one. Here's a student of mine that's a real estate agent I was on the phone with today, and he has no interest in ever opening up shop as the hypnotherapist. I was there, and Sean Michael Andrews' certification class, that's the Smart Alex stage hypnotist, having no interest in the therapy stuff. Now look at mostly what I do. So there's an ongoing dialogue of where we start and where we end up. But I think the real dialogue is having more of these opportunities. And I think it's helping to focus down in terms of, back to one of your original points, it makes it very clear rather quickly what's quality and what isn't.
Okay, great. There's one other thing that I didn't mention. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Karen.
I'm sorry, Michael. Go ahead.
I just want to make sure that we've kind of acknowledged all of the different things that are available for people in terms of online learning, not just the YouTube and the podcasts, the seminars, the workshops, the conventions, and the certification trainings. If that weren't enough, it occurs to me that there's one more that I hadn't considered, and that is that some people, Jamie Smart, for example, is one of them. Igor Ledakowski is one of them. Have a like a subscription community for their inner circle or whatever you would call it. That offers, so you pay by the month for it, I guess.
Yeah. I do the same thing. I've got Hypnotic Workers, which is the hypnosis training library, and then Hypnotic Business Systems, which is the business training library. So it allows people to play that choose your own adventure format. So rather than just the option of here's the live event and let's all talk about that one thing. It allows this open communication that here's people playing with Facebook marketing. Here's people who are playing with this thing of a technique of using glove anesthesia for things that are not pain relief. So there's a whole avenue that's, developing out there in terms of how people can interact. There's even people out there who are doing similar platforms for the muggles, for the general public, that here's your ongoing library of hypnotic audio resources. And hey, we just added this confidence in public speaking program. Nice. The way that, I pay $14 a month for the whole family to have Amazon Music. Right. The way that you're paying about $15 a month, if not a little bit more, for the chat room function for Zoom. So many things are switching over to a subscription.
You got mail.
What's that?
You got mail.
Who's over 50?
Well, several of us, but...
Over 50 what?
But if you put all the stamps on the card, but then you cancel the membership right away, you get the 12 CDs for a penny.
Oh, wow. Good idea. Whenever I give people my email address, they say AOL, it's still in business. Hey, it's actually ranked number 49 in the most visited website. All of them are over 50, by the way.
So, by the way, while the clock is ticking away, Richard, you just mentioned email addresses, and maybe that was a cue from the universe that you've got mail from AOL there. I'd like to get from both of you a chance to let people know how they can get in contact with you guys, and then in a little bit we'll have a little more chat, and then we'll maybe open up for some questions as well. So, Richard, how can people get in touch with you?
I'm easy to find. Subliminalscience.com, hpti.org, Google Richard Nongard, you will find me. Subliminalscience.com. It's the easiest place to find me. Or my Facebook group, icbchgroup.com will take you right to the ICBCH Facebook group. 5,500 members, a well-moderated group with a great group of moderators. And it's a great place to interact with people.
All right. And Jason, how about you?
Yeah, in terms of ongoing hypnosis content, you can head over to worksmarthypnosis.com. You can check out the Work Smart Hypnosis podcast on any medium that plays podcasts. Officially, we're everywhere. Subscribe to it so you get all the upcoming sessions. I've got Rick Green coming this week, Janet Thompson the week after. I'm recording tomorrow with both separately, Scott Sandlin, and we have to wrap up the Kelly T. Woods session before Richard Nongard shows up at her house tomorrow. You can email me, check out my local practice website. It's just virginiahypnosis.com. I'm Jason. I'm in Virginia, and I do hypnosis, so jason@virginiahypnosis.com. Mm-hmm. Or message me on Facebook, and there is a jasonlinett.com, which the fun fact is you can spell it 9 ways incorrectly and still end up at the right place.
Hey, I own all the misspellings of my name also.
Nice.
And while we're doing all that, I want to make sure that anybody that is not a member of Virtual Chapter, not the Virtual Chapter, not a Virtual Chapter.
Our Virtual Chapter.
Just Virtual Chapter on Facebook. Just search it out and join the group so that we can keep you posted about everything that we've got going on over here. So there we go. You got anything else, Karen, or do we want to give these folks a chance to ask some questions?
Well, I think we should open it up to ask some questions, but I do want to point out something that I think is very cool for Richard Nongard, and that is if you have Alexa, ask your Alexa, who is Richard Nongard? And she'll tell you. And I want to know how you got Alexa to know you. How did you become acquainted with Alexa?
Well, the easiest place to find me is go to Amazon and type in Richard Nongard, and Amazon knows me well because I've written about 15 books and people buy them all the time. And they apparently like them too because I have a bunch of 5-star reviews. In fact, I have 2 new books out. One is titled Counseling People Who Have Killed Other People. It's not a hypnosis book, but it is. It's for therapists. And the other one is Viral Leadership by Richard Nongard and Rob Banks. And so Amazon likes me because I sell a lot of books, and Jeff Bezos is a billionaire because of my books.
Because of your books. All right.
My favorite book, by the way, is titled Magic Words and Hypnosis. And you're going to have to buy 2 copies. You're going to have to buy my book, which is titled Magic Words and Hypnosis, and Karen Hand's book titled Magic Words and Hypnosis.
And language patterns. Mine is Magic Words and language patterns.
They have different subtitles, but we are not the same person with pseudonyms. So you must buy both books because both books are excellent.
And I didn't steal from you. I wasn't aware that was your title until after mine was up there. And then
it doesn't bother me at all. The titles are not copyrightable. People don't know that. They're not copyrightable. I just wrote a book titled Viral Leadership, and somebody else had already written a book titled Viral Leadership. And the guy who wrote the foreword to my book wrote a book called Transformational Leadership, and I wrote a book called Transformational Leadership, and so did about 6 other people. So that's the world of publishing for you.
But the good news is about borrowing or stealing from others in our business, because come on,
excellence.
Our business is truly, that's how we pass it around. That's how we get it around. The rule is steal from the best. And there are many of the best right here in this virtual chapter meeting right now. So I would say steal freely.
By the way, Rick Green just said in the chat room, he has both of our books and he likes them both, just as I would hope.
Yes. Thank you, Rick Green. We love you too. And looking forward to hearing you on Jason's podcast next week.
I hope Jason lets me be on his podcast sometime.
One of these days we'll have to get you on there.
I'm on this Friday. I'm on the Barry Maltz podcast, 1.5 million downloads, and I can't even get on Jason's podcast.
Boys.
So let's give these folks a chance to get their questions in. And the easiest way to do that, rather than getting through all the complications of hand raising and all those things, how about if you just, in the chat room, if you just write, I have a question, or even put a question mark, that'll be brilliant. And when we acknowledge you, you can, I'll open up your microphone and you can ask your question. In the meantime, we're going to continue to carry on. So please feel free to let us know what's on your mind.
So a question for you, Richard, too, since you've got the virtual conference and you've got a bunch of different kinds of people on, do you ever get the feedback that people who attend are confused, or that that there are varying different opinions or something like that?
Well, when it comes to the tech side of things, I pay Stephanie to answer dumb questions all day long.
Tech stuff. I need information offered.
Job. Okay, so people are confused about technology. They don't know how to click a link to go to where they're supposed to go. If they follow the directions, though, they would always find it works. From the perspective of learning online, though, no, I don't find people are confused, because I provide, like Jason does, like others who do online education, plenty of places to ask for clarity. Tonight's class, for example, you can type in the chat room right next door to the pre-recorded segment, or you can hold your question till afterwards and you can join the Zoom room. And if you're not going to attend it real time, let's say you're in, Moscow, well, it's 4 o'clock in the morning in Moscow, then you can log in tomorrow morning, you can download it all, and you can send me an email, or you can post in our group at icbchgroup.com, and you can find all of the answers. So, one of the things about hypnosis, and this goes to who's a good teacher, in hypnosis, we know the law of compounding. So we want to phrase a suggestion multiple ways for the auditory, the visual, the kinesthetic person, it multiple times in a session. That's the law of compounding in hypnosis. So when I'm teaching, I try to give explanations that appeal to different types of learners in different ways. And so hopefully by the time I'm done with my demonstrations or sharing my thoughts, I will have covered the best way for the online learner to learn. And the great thing is, like the PDFs I posted earlier in this chat box, the research actually tells us what methods of online education work. And those are the methods that good teachers are using.
And Michael, a question for you. Since we've been doing this certification program, is there something that you like particularly or don't like particularly about training in a group online this way?
Well, I think I said it earlier. I really do like the live interaction. I love gathering together with people. I'm a community guy, but still, it's very much alive. It's quite satisfying. There's something about. I'm still working on it, I almost wish I hadn't said that at the beginning, because I don't want to create an impression. I am a big fan of virtual learning. I'm a huge fan of virtual learning. And there still is something, there's something of a traditionalist that's living inside of me as well that really kind of likes the idea of, hanging out.
The side benefit is it opens up an entirely different community than what was possibly there. Mm-hmm. So I was just a couple of weeks ago teaching a class in London for the first time ever. Mm-hmm. And here's people who had already been interacting with me in some format and were picking up a dialogue and continuing on. Mm-hmm. I then attended someone else's training the next 2 days, and the content was outstanding, but my favorite moment was that this was an audience that maybe a third of them were hypnotists and everyone else had come in from different modalities, which was appropriate for, it was Kevin Lay's SciTap class. And someone goes, "Oh, Jason, is he new to hypnosis?" And someone did a spit take in response to that. Which, I mean, I'm flying back from, Rusty just commented in the group that synchronicity, he's interacting with us here, but he's got one of my courses open on a tab in his browser and one of Richard's courses open in a tab in a browser. And it makes me flash back to that class we did in Vegas, which is now a product. I'm flying back, happen to be on the same flight as one of the students. So she's going, "Nobody's bothering you?" Like, "What do you mean?" She goes, "You're famous." I go, "Big fish, small pond." No, I'm not working right now. No. So looking at it as to, it opens up a whole new community, which does make it fun sometimes that someone walks up to you and they start a conversation, mm-hmm. and you don't yet know them, but they know you.
They know you.
But that's the great thing of this, that it's opening up a dialogue that normally we would not be able to have.
Yeah. And I had just the other side of that, Jason. I think I've had both of those, because on the other hand, I started out, I was working in England for about 7 or 8 years in a row before I really started doing anything online. Mm-hmm. Well, it's not entirely true. Before I started teaching online is what I mean to say. What I was doing was I had been working there, and then because of that, when I came home, I had clients that were distant, and so that's really what got me online doing hypnosis in the first place.
Which, I mean, take everything we've been saying and apply that over to how you run your business in terms of your clients. And my goal is, by the time I'm not having a cold conversation anymore in my business, and I haven't for years, because they're interacting with me on the Virginia Hypnosis website. They're getting to know me in advance, and we're having that conversation. There's 2 dialogues that are existing right now because of something I've been restructuring in terms of how I book my clients. Mm-hmm. The majority of my clients now, we're having a dialogue on the phone after they've already gone through the appropriate educational steps of learning who's a fit and who's not a fit. They're paying online, they're scheduling themselves, and then I'm calling them after they're already sold in the process. Yeah. Which is a whole lot better way to be living these days, and I'm loving it. Sure. But meanwhile, here's the other chunk of the business, which is kind of how I've been doing it for the last 10 years or so, mm-hmm. where we're having that dialogue, but again, it's still a warm conversation because they've already been interacting. It's where a lot of I teach a phone process for booking clients, yet really these days I can ask the question, "What videos on my website have you watched?" And they tell me, and I now know what they need to hear, what they don't need to hear. And back to Richard's comment of compounding, you find, I always flash back to the example of, I think it's still in Mad Magazine. It's a horrible title, but snappy answers to stupid questions, where you would have the same questions pop up every single time. And you as the trainer, you as the practitioner working with clients, well, does it wear off? Do I have to reinforce it? Well, what are your hours? And it's where I've just got this chunk of information that I'm on the phone with a potential client. I'm in the office Monday through Friday. I do a 10, 12, 2, or 4. We typically schedule the appointments about a week apart from each other. And just as soon as I say that, now they don't have to follow up with those questions. Well, I'm in the Franconia part of Alexandria, so really think like you're driving to Springfield, which is much easier to get to, and I've got parking. Which these are the questions people ask in this area. And just those are the little rote bits that I've got, which you as the instructor, there's a moment that killed me years ago. I had just put out the original version of my business training, which I was so excited that it was a 40-hour course. And nowadays it's more than 100 hours because I keep adding to it. But there's a guy in the information marketing world named Jeff Walker. His program is called Product Launch Formula. And what's cool about Jeff is you buy a product once and you get all the ongoing updates. So I bought version like 3.0, and he just put out 7.0 or further, and he just goes, hey, you're already in the community. Here's the new version. And what killed me was he got up and he goes, you may have noticed that the training this time is only about 8 hours long. The first edition of this was 50 hours. It's not that there's less information. It's just that I've become more skilled at teaching it. And I heard that and went, this is what we need to focus on. The quality over the quantity. That there was a dialogue in a recent class around, here's a person that got a result so quickly in terms of something we did, just a quick collapsing anchors. And we're working on a driving issue. And I'm going, you feel that, right? Yeah. He goes, this is different. I said, option. We can keep working the day, or let's bank the rest of the time for later. And for him to go out immediately and get in the car and get that instant feedback that, yeah, I'm on the other side of this, is that shift was so profound from that, oh no, but we booked an hour and a half. We have to fill the hours. Yeah. No, it's all about getting that result in terms of the educational side, in terms of the client experience. What is it that we can do to get much more direct in what we do? And, you know, the line from the theater community used to be cutting out the extraneous air. Sure. That there was just all this extra stuff. And I'm always playing the game of, let me pull away this one other element and see what happens. Let me pull away. We've got Cheryl and Larry on the call here. And the number of people who have tried to improve the Dave Ellman induction over the years. And I love that they're laughing at this before I even finish the sentence. Nearly every single improvement is trying to negate some conflict that someone created by doing the process badly. And here's a student of mine who goes, you know, I'm using your version of the Ellman induction. I'm like, mine is the original. It's sanded down to the original steps because it just worked that way, as opposed to adding all this extraneous stuff that didn't have to be there in the first place. It was negating problems that you wouldn't run into if you were doing the original in the first place. Yeah, yeah. So again, getting more efficient to the point. And what is it we can do to expedite the time with our client that they can interact with me on a video, the same mechanisms we've been talking about, that now by the time we're on the phone, we're continuing a conversation rather than starting fresh.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. Lovely.
By the way, I just wanted to point out something. This is the great thing about online education. So I'm here with you in Zoom in the IMDHA virtual chapter room. And since my class starts at 7, I just opened it up in another window. And since it's pre-recorded, I can continue on here for at least another 45 minutes. And I can still answer questions in my chat box. And these are the opportunities that we have that we otherwise wouldn't have without the internet.
Yeah.
But one who
Let
is
me
that
reveal there were actually 3 Richard Nongards.
I'm just saying you have to be pretty tech savvy to keep up with all of that, Richard.
There are 2 Richard Nongards.
And you know what? And I've never seen both of them in the same place at the same time.
Well, you need to come to my birthday party because my son will be here. My son will be here actually in about 2 or 3 more weeks. Sergeant Richard Nongard.
All right. Well, listen, Richard, we're going to let you get back to your class, though, in a minute because the clock is ticking away. In fact, we're down to our last 5 minutes here. And one of the things that we need to do is we need to go over those announcements again, just so that people know how they can get the recording of this and everything. And then we're going to have our great send-off for you guys. So this has been a great start. It's been a lovely chat. I'm just hoping that through the dialogue, my primary interest, and maybe I was a little unclear about it within myself, because I've got two different conversations going on here. One of them is, how can we do this well, because we're really interested in doing it. And the other is from the standpoint of just consumers of hypnotic services and hypnotic education. How do people find information on the internet? How do they find us? How do classes work for those folks? I want to make sure that the folks that are listening, if any of, I have a feeling that all of these folks are already hypnotists, but if any of them are not, just in case any of them are not, just be clear that there are a million ways to get information about hypnosis online. Some of them seem to be a little better than others, and as we discussed at the very beginning, I think you can discern that after just a little while if you have a sincere interest and you start looking into it. But you already know, if this is your first experience like this, that there are people like Richard Nongard and Jason Linett and Karen Hand and myself, and the Ellmans, and who offer tremendous programs, and Joni, and everybody here. I can't list all your names, but
But I see a lot of people on here who contribute in a variety of ways. A lot of people who contribute to the Facebook forums and the other ways that we have to educate each other and keep each other informed and help each other. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of people in this community, our virtual chapter group, that participate in a lot of ways to share information, and online, whether it's YouTube or it's Facebook or it's online training. It's another way for us to really help our profession be better.
Well, and a bunch of folks out there got some really good information from Joni Knighty here last month when she was our guest. And I know your microphone is muted, Joni, and you can open it if you want to. I just want to acknowledge that I saw something on Facebook today that said you just got rid of a million digital recordings, and I guess, or something like that, right? Did a big marketing thing.
Me?
Yeah, didn't you just in the last? Was it you?
That was me. That was me.
I think you're confusing her with Victoria Gallagher.
Victoria
Oh,
Gallagher.
you know what? That's exactly right. That's exactly right. I'm sorry, Tony. But I'm sure that you've done something. I'm sure you've done something wonderful today as well. So forget.
Yes, I did. I hypnotized 49 athletes today. At once.
Excellent.
Very good.
It was
But I like that other scenario.
Congratulations either way.
Yeah, it was great to have you last month, though, and you guys tonight. It's been lovely. So we ought to do this again sometime. But in the meantime, let me just mention to everybody once again that we are a chapter of IACT and IMDHA. We are endorsed by the IHF, and now we are also endorsed by the ICBCH, I think, for CEUs. So collect your CEUs from those organizations. Tell them I spent an hour and a half with those folks, and I want that time back. So they'll give you credit for it. The replay will be available tomorrow. It will be posted in the virtual chapter group. It will on Facebook. It will also be posted on the IACT IMDHA forum for people that are members of that. So you can see it there.
They can be like Rusty, who's apparently watching 3 trainings at once, so he gets 4.5 hours.
Yeah. And next month, August 14th, we will have a very special speaker, so watch your internet for an announcement about that. And with all that said, Karen, is it time?
Yes, it is time. And it was just lovely seeing all of you tonight. Thank you very much for joining us. Let's open it up and do the big rousing send-off.
Yeah, so here's what we do. We're going to open up the microphones so everybody can say good night and Godspeed all at the same time, and in the great cacophony of love and affection that reverberates through the hypnosis community. Good night, everybody. We'll see you around.
Bye.
Good night. Bye. Good night. Thank you.
Bye.
Take it rain.
Hey, Mark.
Hey, people.
Night.
Y'all come back now, you hear?
We do have a great chapter, don't we?
We do. Oh, by the way, Karen, meet Teresa. She was here. Hey, Jason.
Night, Cheryl.